All right, well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you're logging in from. We want to welcome you to another Aplos webinar. This is our once-a-month educational webinar series. Of course, many of you attend a lot of our other webinars, but this one is really a fun one that we get to do every month, where we get to talk about fundraising and fundraising practices. And many times, like today, we bring on special guests who are just so knowledgeable in the field and all of that. So we want to welcome you. And I know there's still a few folks logging on right now, which is fine. So we're going to do a couple of housekeeping things just to kind of get things going. The first, of course, is just want to make sure that everybody can both hear my voice and see the screen in front of you. You should be able to see a title screen. So if just a couple of you could just type in the question box right there and just let me know that you're, yeah, there you go. Good. Welcome. Hi, Paul. Good. It's always fun. Some folks that are either return webinar participants or first time, no matter what. Great. Good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Super. Well, we're super excited about today's webinar with Mary. And so we're going to get going in just a minute on that. But before we, good afternoon. Before we get going, just going to do, again, a couple other kind of housekeeping things. Again, if you're new with us, just know that we really are excited that you're decided to join an Aplos webinar. My name is Dan Kimball. I'm a product specialist here at Aplos. I spent over 20 years in the fundraising field, doing fundraising for a variety of nonprofits, and now I'm with Aplos, helping nonprofits use their software. So if that's something that you're interested in and you need some information on, we can certainly help you that. But that's not what we're here today. You're not going to get an infomercial on Aplos, but we are going to get right into it. But before we get going, we've been kind of doing this lately and kind of excited about that. We're going to actually ask you to participate a little bit. So because today we're going to talk about annual reports. So I'm going to kind of launch a little poll here. I'm just going to ask for you to answer the question here. And the question that you're going to see up on your screen is, do you send annual reports to your donors and constituents? So if you could just take a minute and participate in that. There's no right or wrong answer. We're just trying to get a sense of kind of what's going on out there. So we'll leave that open for a second or two. Great. I like the honesty there. Good. All right, I'm gonna just a couple more seconds. I'm gonna close this poll down and then we'll do another one. So we got about half and half. About half send every year. About just under half, it's just under 50% are. Oops. When do I send those again? And then a little bit in the middle there. So the next one is we're going to ask, so just want to real quick, we just want to know what kind of software you guys are using out there. So if you don't mind letting us know, again, what kind of accounting software is out there. Good. Thanks, you guys, for participating in that. All right. Just a couple more seconds on that. Still a few more people logging on there. Welcome. If you're just joining us a little late, we want to welcome you. Just kind of doing a few little polls. And then the last question right here is, what is your annual revenue of your organization? So this is nothing we share with anybody other than just some information for us to know. I like to know kind of what size nonprofits are logging on and kind of making sure that we're putting content out there that's works for you and applicable. Great. Super. All right. All right. Well, thank you guys again, and we're going to do a couple more polls in the middle here, so we'll get going with that. And so without further ado, I'm going to actually kind of get right into our guest today with Mary. This is really super exciting because Mary and I have actually never physically met, but we are social friends, social media friends. We've connected out on the Twitter universe, and I'm a great fan of her work and her knowledge of fundraising and as a consultant and a blogger. She'll tell you a little bit about herself, but as you can see in her bio, she's worked with lots of community-based organizations. She's been in the space as a fundraiser, so she gets it. She's not just a consultant telling you things that she hasn't experienced herself. So I'm really excited about this particular topic today about annual reports. And so, Mary, welcome. Would like to welcome you to an Aplos webinar. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn the controls over to Mary, and she's going to drive the ship for a while. And then at the very end, we will have some Q&A. And like all of our webinars, just so you all know, do know that we record our webinars, and if you registered, you will receive a copy and a recording, a copy of the slides and a recording. So with that, Mary, I'm going to turn the ship over to you and let you drive for a while. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks very much, everyone. Have you got my screen? Nope, we need to get that there.
Okay.
Let me know if you got me.
All right. Let me go there. There we go. All right.
All right. There we go. So hi, everyone. Let's talk about annual reports. Important, lots of work, stuff we all want to do every year, but hopefully today we'll give you a bit of a sense of how to make them work for you as well. A little bit about me, as Dan said, I've been doing this for quite a long time, in the trenches for most of it. Don't do the math there. I'm now the principal of Hands-On Fundraising, and my work is mostly centered around great donor communications and helping smaller nonprofits with things like fundraising plans. And as you will see with today, I am one of that tribe of donor love fanatics, because it feels good, but also because it works. So let's talk about annual reports. Why do you do an annual report? Of course, there's the requirement, but the requirement doesn't mean you have to make a beautiful production. It's just some information that your Secretary of State probably needs. But there are good reasons to do an annual report: to show your organization's accomplishments for the year, to provide financial information. And that's really important for donors, and they're getting more and more wise to that every year, which is great. So the more transparent you are about that, the more trust you build, and you really want that. And to communicate with your supporters. It's important to have lots of touch points through the year and to let them know what it is that you're doing. Most of all, because donors are the main audience for this annual report. So here's a little question for you. Who owns this thing? Who oversees the process? Who works with writers and designers? Who helps create the theme and the focus of the annual report? Can we take a little second here, Dan? Maybe I have control of it. Is that one?
Yeah, you have.
Yes,
yeah.
I have control of it. Okay, here we go. We're going to do one more little quick poll for you. If you just take a second and let me know how it works at your place. So who's got the final say on your organization's annual report? Who controls that? Does it live with the ED or your marketing communications staff or fundraising? Or perhaps one person wears all those hats if your organization is small enough. Oh, and I apologize. I'm getting used to these poll things. Now it's open. There we go, Mary.
Yeah, so you have to launch.
Yeah, you can answer.
You have to launch it.
Yep. Sorry about that, everyone. Give it just another second. Looks like it's overwhelmingly your executive director. Oh, look at that. Yeah, we've got like 81% ED and 19% fundraising. Wow. And no marketing comms people. All right, well, here's my answer. And I have ruffled some feathers with this in the past. But I think the right answer is your fundraising department. And even if that's just a one person and you need help making it happen. But the audience for your annual report, the most important audience, are your supporters. And when I say donors, I mean funders, and I mean volunteers who are donors of their time. So that's a more inclusive term than just individual people who give you money. That's your main audience. They're the ones who've invested in you, and they're your partners. So they want to hear what they've accomplished. Secondary audiences like the press or general public, they're not going to be put off if this publication is all tilted toward being really grateful to the people who support you. There's no reason that will make them think less of you. And most of all, this publication isn't for insiders. You don't do this for you. It's not about making you feel proud or your ED feel accomplished or bragging rights for your board. And it's definitely not about your designer's portfolio, but I'll touch on that later. The main point is there's no room for ego in this publication. Your annual report should be a fundraising document. It's a great chance to report to donors and to thank donors and to ask for more support too. So just keep in mind that tooting your horn can't compete with gratitude and information that builds relationships, that builds trust. So what do you do to make a good annual report? You focus on your donors. Focus all your attention on the people who make your work possible. Make it all about gratitude toward them. You can celebrate your accomplishments, but celebrate them with donors. It's not, we're fabulous and did this. It's together, because of you, we did these things. Again, you don't lose anything by sharing the credit. So make sure they know that they matter, that they're important. And guess what? When they know that they matter and they're important, they're going to stick with you. And given our abysmal donor retention rates across the country right now, something like 46%, it's awful. Donor retention is really important, and making them feel needed and wanted and making sure they understand how grateful you are will keep them on your side. Besides, when you want to brag, what's better, having your donors out there in the community bragging for you or bragging for yourself, right? Better to have someone else, a third party is always going to be more trusted with that. So ooze gratitude. I know it can feel awkward sometimes at first if that's not your usual way of behaving, but you can't go overboard. As long as you're sincere, there is no way you can be too grateful or too emotional with your donors. It's just, it doesn't happen. And gratitude is a really powerful emotion. When you make this report about the donors, not about you, you pull them in and you involve them more deeply in your work. You make yourselves really partners, and that's really what you want. So a few examples here, because they're much easier to understand than just me talking at you. This is a gratitude report, not an annual report, done by an agency in Toronto who I just love. I love their work, and you're going to see a bunch of it in here because they really get it. They're called Agents of Good. John Lepp and Jen Love. They're awesome. They're great at annual reports because they're totally focused on donors. So here's another question for you. We're going to do another quick poll, and this time I'll get it right. Do you need a letter from your executive director in your annual report? You know, we look at these annual reports and we say, yes, well, that's the way they need to go. That's how it should work. And that's just the usual template. But think about whether you actually need it. And tell me what you think there. We're getting to be a little closer. We're about 43% yes and 50. No, now we're down to 50-50.
Like
it's a tie. All right. Well, I bet you can guess my answer. No. Ask yourself these questions. Is your executive director a celebrity or a person that donors are just itching to hear from? You could be a celebrity in your community. Does the ED have something new and interesting to share? Something donors really need to hear? If you look at these letters, they're usually just a lot of, as one old boss used to say, justifying your existence. You know, it's a list of, here's what we did this year. Here's our activities for the year. It's not very interesting. If you're racking your brains to think about what to put in that letter, think about just not including it. It's just not that interesting most times. If it's not moving and it's not important to your donors, don't waste the space. Use it for something more terrific and more interesting for your donors. So we're going to play a little game here. And folks, if you have any questions along the way, feel free. But we're going to play a little game here of yes or dull. Because so many annual reports go the safe route. As soon as you open up what you're going to see, they'll start with an ED letter or a board chair letter or both, and then have some kind of mission or vision statement, and then a list of activities, and then financials, and then donor lists. So other than the photos, and maybe if they've gotten great copies, some copy, but it's you kind of know what you're going to get. So here is one. I think this is from Rotary, but it doesn't matter. Is this a yes or a dull? It is a dull. This letter I picked because it's pretty typical. It's mostly the answer to what have you been doing this year? What have you been doing to justify your existence? But activities just aren't interesting. And in this case, what they're reporting on in this letter is mostly their fundraising success. Now, if you're a fundraiser, fundraising success is always very interesting. How'd they do that? If you're a donor, probably not so much. It's inside baseball. Your aim is to make your readers feel something, not just to make sure they know that you've been busy. So here's another one. You know the answer to this one already, right? Holy moly. This is horribly dull. This is just awful. And what's even worse is this goes on for 4.5 pages like this. And to top it all off, this is an art museum. Holy moly. If you're an art museum, you must have so many beautiful, gorgeous images you can show that will communicate your value to the community and to the donor immediately. And instead, they have like 5 pages of tiny, dense blocks of text. I'll bet you not a single person has read this. They could be full of typos. Nobody'd ever find them. How about this one? This is the front cover. It starts with a story on the front cover. That is cool. Now you see that front cover and you see the story, and it's nice and big, so it's easy for you to read. And you have to keep reading, right? You want to know what happens. Stories are great. And this one just totally runs with it. They just went all out with this one. And yes, it's another Agents of Good one. You can't resist opening it. And that's what you want. You want people to get it in the mail and not say, oh, yeah, whatever, recycling. You want them to look at it and say, oh, wait a minute. Wow, what happened to that woman? I need to know. Oh, wait, I have to open that. You want to grab them. And this is a great way to just do it right from the beginning. This is what that same annual report does instead of that letter from the executive director. The book starts with the story on the cover, and you open it and you go right into the story. It does get some of the information there about the organization out that you might have wanted to do in a ED letter, but it's a story. And it keeps you involved. So it definitely a yes, not a dull. Your new brand. Someone worked really hard all year long on creating a new brand for their organization. And I know they must be proud of it. And we don't have enough here to know whether it's great or not. But it was like their life's work all year. But guess what? Your donors don't care at all. Nobody outside your walls cares about how you worked on your brand. And now look at our new brand. Your brand isn't your colors or your logo or your tagline. Your brand is how you make people feel about you. I think the people reading this probably felt a little bit confused. It's so well-meaning, but this isn't what your donors want to hear about. They want to know what they did, not what you were busy doing. This is a focused on the organization kind of annual report. I love their headline. That Everyday Heroes thing is awesome. But Then they go on, and these everyday heroes turn out to be employees of the medical center. It's all about them. Their donor, it just disappears. There's no donor in this publication. It's a great idea. And boy, what they could have done, they could have focused on patients. They could have focused on volunteers. They could have focused on donors. They could have done all kinds of things. But instead, it's all about, boy, aren't we great? Here's another person who works for us who's great. We're great. Aren't we great? Not so interesting. Instead, focus on your donors. This is another Agents of Good creation. It's full of stories of the people outside their walls who make the work happen. Featuring your donors or your volunteers is a great way to tell your story without bragging. Here's one that focuses on volunteers. It's great. You read that as an outside person and you think, wow, they really think the people who help them are important. That's kind of good. That, by extension, that's me too. And that's what you want. You want people to feel involved, like they matter. So that one is a big yes. And that yes is what you want to be looking for when you're putting this together. Is this something that someone outside your walls is going to look at and feel, yes, 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 my gift actually mattered. Yes, together we're getting really great stuff done or preventing really awful stuff from happening. Yes, these people care about me. They care about volunteers. They care about donors. This is great. And boy, this story, I need to know what's going on. Is it exciting? Is it new? Is it full of emotion? That's what you're looking for. That's the yes. Emotion is so important. I can't stress this enough. Nobody is interested in lists of statistics and dense, high grade level, boring writing. Everything is about emotion. And that goes for everyone, although a lot of people will say it's not them. We make every decision based on emotion, and then we justify it quickly with rational arguments. But emotion is what drives people to action. And really, why bother doing an annual report if there's not some action that you want people to take from this, right? Do you want them to give again? Do you want them to share this report with people they know, to bring in new supporters? Do you want this to get to your government people so they say, oh, wow, no, we got to make sure funding doesn't get cut from these guys. Use emotions like a painter would use a palette. Choose the ones that work best for what you're trying to say and use them. Think about what you want your readers to feel as they look at this report. Do you want them to feel concerned about a problem, worried, I need to do something about this? Proud of what their gift made possible, wow, even me, I got something really good for the world done. That feels great. Happy that they've helped, or sad that the problem continues. Choose the emotions you want to convey and then let it all hang out. You can't hide from it. There is an instinct that we all have to be proper and professional and to tamp those feelings down and just, be very professional. Don't. Doing that cheats yourself and it cheats your readers. You can't skip. You have to just go, let it all there. Feel all the feels and share all the feels. Put it out there. In order to write a great annual report, you've got to go through the feelings that you want to share with your audience. You've got to feel what you want them to feel. This is not a textbook, and readers aren't reading it to be educated because they're such ignorant fools and you all know everything, right? Sometimes we fall into that mindset, and it's not healthy. It's not a good thing for anybody. Your readers want to feel something. And you want them to feel something because those feelings are what will lead to action. Stories are often missing in an annual report, and that's a mistake because stories have been the way since our species evolved that we communicate. again, it's how we're wired. They're powerful. They're so powerful. So find your stories and tell your stories in a compelling way. And you do that by getting in close and sharing real lives. If you can, give the overall report a big story, and then illustrate it maybe with some smaller vignettes, some smaller stories. I kind of can't say it enough, but think in terms of stories, not in terms of statistics. You can tell stories with text. This is an annual report I worked on for an organization here in Connecticut. Unfortunately, design choices squished all the words down and shoved them to 1/3 of the page. So we'll talk about that nonsense later. But the focus here isn't on this marvelous organization. The focus here is on, in this case, one young woman who was a beneficiary who worked with this organization. She was adorable. She's so cute. She came to them to get education, to get a job path, and she's on her way now in the medical field. And telling her story was a way to bring people in to what this organization really does. You could have all kinds of explanations about, well, here's what we do. We engage community youth who are having difficulties in school. If you just tell Casmane's story, you get it. You don't have to worry about all the other stuff. You get it, and you care about her. So you care about helping the organization. This is an interesting way to tell stories with text. It's not a narrative, certainly, but I bet you all know exactly which organization this is because that's their tagline. But with just a few little pieces of information there, they give you an overall picture of what it is that they're there for, what their calling is. Okay, yes, another Agents of Good. They did this for an organization called Code. It's a literacy and learning organization up in Canada, so I should say organization. They tell the story with illustrations like from a kid's book. And it's gorgeous. It's just beautiful. And it's really effective. They keep the text to a minimum and like you would with a kid's picture book and tell the story. Images are also, again, the way we're made. Even if it's a picture, someone looking out of the page right into the camera, so right into your eyes, grabs your eyes. It might be an instinct thing, like something's looking at me. Is this danger or a friend, back in our lizard brains, but you can't help but look. So a really good image can tell a whole lot of a story. You see this adorable little girl staring, smiling right at you with a box of strawberries in her hand, and behind her, this bustling kitchen going on. This is the Oregon Food Bank. So you get a sense of what life is right there and what it means to the cute little girl with a face full of strawberry juice all over it. She's adorable. Sometimes you can tell a whole story without a single word if your brand is big and strong enough. So if you're the American Red Cross, you need a logo and a disaster, and everyone knows immediately what you're trying to convey, right? We should all aspire to having that strong a brand, I suppose. But if you've got it, you might as well do it. You can also tell a story with numbers, and you should use your numbers to tell a story. This is what most annual reports, financials kind of look like. Lots of numbers on a page, and most people reading it aren't really going to pay attention. They may look at the bottom line to see, are these guys, are they running out of money, or is my donation going to actually accomplish something? But it's a lot of information, and it's not particularly interesting, and it doesn't really tell you much unless you're willing to dig in and really get through the numbers. You can still use financials, and you can still do that in a transparent, complete way, but this one takes all of that information and makes it much more accessible. pie charts are great, right? At a glance, you know, you don't need to know public health education is 303,000. You can just look at that and say, of that 783, there's how much of it takes up. The only thing I'd quibble with here is over under assets. Do you see the second thing down there? That's inside language again. Beneficial interest in perpetual trusts. Oh dear Lord, what does that mean to the average person? Not necessarily a whole lot. So I would have preferred if they found a way to use regular language to do that. But even so, that's a clear, easy to look at, easy to dive into way to put your story out there with numbers. Oops, hello, there we go. This one is really cool too. They just went for an infographic. Really, if you think about it, when people want to know the financials in your annual report, they just want the big picture. You know, did they lose money last year or make money last year? How much of that money goes to this program? How much to that program? This one tells the story right there. And it's really easy to read. It makes it very easy. This is that same Oregon Food Bank, I think. Yeah. So they have sort of the typical stuff on the left-hand side. You know, regular kind of budget, balance sheet, which is that I can't see. Just the regular financial report. But then they use the other side of the page, which is the side that's going to get the eyeballs first. And they tie it right into what they actually do, right? The fruits and veggies up there to represent percentages, and then just a simple pie chart. It's smart, and it ties it right back to their mission, which is what they want to do. All right, I promised I'd do this, and if you don't mind me, going off a little bit here on this stuff, but designers are your friends, and sometimes not so much your friends with this. Especially if they're working for you pro bono, they see this as an opportunity to make something gorgeous for their portfolio. But you got to keep them focused on what the real purpose of this is, and it's not their portfolio. Remember, even if you're not paying them, but they've agreed to work with you, they're working for you. Well, there are a lot of ways design can just get in the way of an effective annual report. So here's one example. Great picture. Look at all those people looking right at you. You got Clifford sitting there and books and happy kids, and it's all terrific. And then you've got this white text over not even a black background, which would be marginally better, but over a photograph. You can't read that text. It's small, it's white, there's very little contrast, and you're supposed to read that over a picture. Yeah, it's very arty, but it's not very practical. It's not very effective. Here's some more reverse type. Again, someone thought this looked lovely, and it does. You've got the tree and the building that looks like a university, right? It has that sort of sophisticated, elegant kind of feel to it. But again, it's reverse type, which is just avoided at all costs, unless you're talking maybe just a headline. It's hard to read. Black on white is the easiest to read. And you see, that's your goal. You want to be as close to that as possible. In this case, it's reverse type over a background that's not very dark. So there's very little contrast here. So all that copy that you worked so hard to create, probably not going to be read, because again, it's too hard to read. Okay, yes, that's Comic Sans, and yes, I'm being a wise guy. But your font choice matters. It really does. It's not just a design decision. Generally speaking, at least up until now, I have been reading just in the last day or two that there may be some new learning to be had about what works best. But what has always worked best is a serif font when you're talking about a print publication, something that you're going to have on paper. It's just easier for most people to read. What I've been reading about lately is perhaps people with learning disabilities or vision problems. That might not be as true. So there's always time to learn something new and change what you're doing. But at this point, I'd stick with something serif. But on top of that, look at this thing. You've got this great picture. Look at that smile. Oh, you got to love him. And down here too, eyes right on the camera. And then they take all the text and they put it into one big square. There's no paragraph breaks. There's nothing to invite you in, no indents, and everything all just in one big blob. And it's tiny. Can you read that without squinting? I can't. Again, it's not going to be read. It could say something wonderful, but you won't know because the designer said, let me put this cool concrete blue stuff behind it. And then we'll just put they treat text as a design element instead of, not everyone, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes designers will treat text as a design element and forget that it has a utility all its own that needs to be respected. So just be careful about that. And don't hesitate to push back if that's what that starts happening. Again, more dense blocks of text. Really, the more breaks you have, the easier it is for people to dive in and read. And then add to that a little indent for each paragraph, and people's eyes will have something to catch, and it will keep them reading. These guys didn't do that. Again, it's a sans serif font. It's fairly small. I think we're saying now 14 is the new 12 point. So it doesn't invite you to read it. It doesn't bring you in. No, you probably read it if you're Beth Bradley or Jeff Siddick, but most of the donors probably didn't because it just looks like a lot of work. Nobody's going to do the work. Oh, dear Lord.
Oh, boy.
Right? So this happens all the time, though. This needs about 5 more pages, and each one of those little blocks needs its own page so it can open up and breathe. And then you have the picture behind the text. Nobody's going to read this, and it's sad because they probably have something terrific to say there. But just no, don't do that. Don't do that. Give it some room. If you have that much that you really want to say, make your report longer. That's all. And if you don't, then just cut ruthlessly. But give everything lots of white space and give the font enough size that people can read it without having to struggle. So images are awesome and they tell powerful stories. So I wanted to share another couple of things. The guy on the right from the cancer, the Ullman Cancer Fund, look at that. He's looking right at you. He's talking about a fight and he's inviting you into that with the text there, right? Because of you, I won't fight alone. Oh, wow. I'm in it with you, dude. Look at you. Yes. So you've got a whole story right on that cover. And again, the Red Cross. Now, the guy facing the camera is not looking into the camera, but look at all that raw emotion in his face. You almost want to cry just looking at him. You can see how emotional, how, is that relief? Is that sadness? Is it both? And then all you need to see is that Red Cross and you know what's going on in that photo. So take the time to look for images that speak in that way to what you do, that almost don't need words to tell people what you do. And then when you add words, it will be just that much more powerful. This is what you don't want to do. This is a variation on what we call the big check picture. It's not interesting to anybody. It doesn't tell any story. You can't even see what's on that little plaque that they're holding. And there's no caption even to let you in on that. Yeah, again, if you want to do little introductions of your staff, perhaps that, something new to share with donors, maybe, but a picture like this, what emotion does it convey? They made us come out here and smile for the camera. Don't do it. Just don't. Don't bother. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I know. I'm sorry, but it's just a waste of space. It really is. Show your work in action instead of a bunch of people holding a plaque. Yeah, you got a plaque, whatever, but show your actual work, and it's going to be so much more effective. So there's one more big question that everybody probably has, because we're all thinking about this now.
Mm-hmm.
Print or online? Everybody in the world is online, it feels like now. So should we save lots of money and not do print? Well, they've both got their use. Print annual reports give people something they can hold on to. And a lot of people, especially older people who make up most of your donors, really enjoy sitting down and reading something. And goodness knows, you want them to really enjoy sitting down and reading something that you send them, right? Also, I have heard stories about those annual reports making their way out into the community, sitting in a waiting room, a doctor or a lawyer, and somebody just picks it up for something to read and becomes captured by your mission and your story, and suddenly you have a new donor. You never know. And it provides a useful archive item. So there are good reasons to think about print. Online, on the other hand, is less expensive. It can be interactive. You could include video as well as still images. You can do all kinds of things. You can link to more information when people might be interested. And obviously, you've got a broader potential reach. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? But potentially, the universe is your potential audience. So which one is best for you? It's always going to be an individual organization's call. But what I find myself suggesting most often is to have it all. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I can't make decisions, and I want no compromise. But you could have it all. You could have all the donuts. You could print a smaller number of reports. And today with digital printing, it's not like, and I'm probably the oldest person here thinking about it, but when they actually had to typeset stuff and print it, you wanted to print them all if you're going to do it, because it was so expensive. With digital printing, they could run 200, they could run 2,000, they could run 20,000, and you're going to pay for the paper, but it's much less expensive now to do a smaller run. So do a smaller run. Do a smaller run and send them to your funders or your potential funders, to government officials, and maybe estate attorneys. Maybe somebody will be looking through your annual report when they're thinking about changing their will. You never know. And then ask your donors what they prefer. You may have donors who really are not comfortable online and would like to have that to look at. Send them a postcard a month or so before, or maybe more, depending on your timeline, how you're scheduling the production of this. And ask them what they prefer. And then calculate how many you'll need based on that. If they don't want to print one, make sure you send them to the online one. Send them a little letter or an email to let them know that it's ready online. One caution with that, when I was putting this presentation together for you, I had a heck of a time finding annual reports on most organizations' sites. They're buried in all kinds of weird places. They're never in the main navigation or even as a drop down. So if you're going to put it online and put it on your site, make the most of it. Make it clear where it lives, even maybe a link right on the homepage in annual report time, so that your donors who said they'll look at it online can actually get there and actually do it. Don't make it hard for them to find their way. So that's annual reports. And I bet you've got some questions. And Dan and I were talking about that and said, let me see what I can do to answer those for you.
Great. That last slide made me hungry for donuts.
I know.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this back over from Mary. This is great because it's so practical, which I love. One question that came in early while you were talking, Mary, was when should you send out your annual report? What time of year? Some come out in the spring. I mean, do you have any thoughts about that?
I think that depends on your organization. When does your fiscal year start? Usually a bit after that, so you have a whole year you can report on, makes sense. But other than that, there's no perfect, only this is the right season to do it. You might also want to look at the community you're in, and if everybody in the world is sending their annual report in January, you might want to maybe do it in March and get a little bit more attention. But mostly it's a factor of when your year ends and how long after that you can collect the information that you want for the financials, which is the official reason that you need to put an annual report together.
Okay. Good. Another question here wants to know, I noticed that some of your slides were a lot of them in color. Does color versus black and white matter?
Oh, that's a good question. Black and white can be very effective and very emotional. It might be a little trickier to do that from a design point of view, but it can be done. And when it's done well, it's really, really good. Okay. So yeah, you could probably just be very creative with it. Great images that work in black and white.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Go ahead and use the question box in the bottom if you are wondering how to ask a question. Just type in your question, and we'll read those out as you go. So, question about for nonprofits that have smaller budgets. Do you have any thoughts about thoughts about for nonprofits with smaller budgets? What are some things that we can do?
There are lots of options for it. On the first, it doesn't have to be a gorgeous, heavy paper, beautiful, coffee table production. It can still be done with good storytelling and a lot of heart and be something you produce there. So what you convey is more important than how beautiful and glossy it is when you convey it. There are some organizations who have managed to get the annual report down to a postcard. I don't have the link handy, but Kivi LaRoe Miller, if you look her up and go to her site, she has collected a whole bunch of these. I don't remember whether she's got it on Pinterest or in some other way, but Kivi's been kind of collecting great examples of postcard annual reports. And
I imagine if you just Google annual report examples, I suspect you could probably find some good hits, right, Mary?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you just do a few with a personal letter for your most important people in print, and then just make a web page and do it that way online, you can do that as well.
Okay, good. Esther Gonzalez is asking, is it true that churches are not required to do an annual report?
You know what? I bet that varies with the state.
Yeah.
But that sounds like it makes sense because there seem to be, more allowances for religious organizations.
Okay.
But I would check with your state Secretary of State.
Do 501c3s have to do an annual report, or are they optional?
I think again that's a state reg, and it might be that your annual report, in quotes, that's required is just your financial report, and you go online, you fill the numbers in, and there you're done.
So that's your whatever your 990 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good question. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a bit of a longer question, but I'm looking forward to it. I recently started working at an organization that printed its 2016 annual report in July. They did not mail it out to donors. Should we do anything with the printed copies at this time of year? Or should we just wait until the 17 report comes out in March?
Interesting.
That's a great question.
It's a really good question.
Because especially for you nonprofits that have a different annual or budget cycle. Some are September through August, some are July 1. January through December. There's various, some are April kind of thing. Any thoughts on that?
I might be tempted to try it and include a letter that says, we're working busily to report back to you on 2017, but in the meantime, we wanted to make sure you saw this because you're so important to us, and use it just as an opportunity to touch base with your donors, include an envelope in it.
Yeah.
And it might work as an appeal then for you, but there's going to be an expense in mailing it, obviously. So you have to weigh that.
Yeah, and I would just really reemphasize one of the points you made, Mary, for those of you that remember this, about just really check your numbers. I think it's frustrating when you walk in someone's office, or I've seen nonprofits and they just have boxfuls of annual reports that end up getting thrown away. And I will say, I think the larger organizations are particularly guilty of this. And it's very frustrating to see that. So you got time for a couple more questions, Mary?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure
so
thing.
We have somebody here who's this is Jenny, who's we are not yet 501c3. We have a fiscal sponsor. Congratulations, by the way, Jenny. We are trying to grow our donor base and foundation grants and volunteers. Any recommendations? Question: would an annual report be a good idea? There's a little more to this question. We would also want to build toward being our own 501c3, but we have very small staff, limited resource. So
I would think some version of an annual report would be a great way to explain what's going on and report back to the donors you have had through there, and start putting your stake in the ground as your own organization, right?
Yeah, and I agree. And I would really go back to the slides that you made. And folks, you'll all get a copy of this, but I really like the infographic look on the annual reports. And I think I came out of the corporate and foundation world in my last nonprofit job, and I really think that foundations, especially corporate foundations, they enjoy the annual report. They want to see not the boring stuff, but they want to see some statistical information because it shows, obviously it shows impact.
Impact, yeah.
So I
not what you were busy doing, but what you accomplished.
Yeah. And so Jenny, I would really encourage you to just start, with a real simple. Just here's 2 or 3 highlights of our year, and maybe and again, I'm not as skilled on the design side, but I do know that infographics there's actually software programs that will do infographics for you, and I don't think it costs a lot of money. So you can certainly reach out to me here at Aplos if you would like more info or follow-up questions on that. So any other questions as we kind of wrap up here our time with Mary? Mary, I just again, I'm really grateful for how practical your slides were there. Just some really great. Oh, you're welcome, Jenny.
Thanks.
Just really good stuff. So here we got a couple minutes as we wrap up here. If you guys have any other questions, it looks like that's about all the questions coming in for now. You folks, we have my contact information right here, as well as Mary's. If you're interested in Mary from obviously from a consulting side, or if there's any other questions from the webinar, she'd follow up with you. I really take advantage of some of the experts that are out there. Mary, I'm grateful for the work you're doing in the nonprofit space. And for those of you out there that took the time to join our webinar today, we want to thank you.
Absolutely.
We know you're extremely busy, and especially this time of year, December, as the holidays are approaching, and many of you are working on your year-end appeals and hopefully calling donors and loving on donors. We hope you're taking advantage of that. And so we're grateful that you took an hour out of your time to be with us. So unless there's anything else, I'm just going to leave the slide up here for another few seconds. We'll sign off, and you should get an email from us here in the next couple of days with a recording and copy of the slides. Mary, again, on behalf of Aplos and all the work we do, we want to thank you for taking time to join us today.
Oh, well, thank you very much, everyone. Really was fun.
Good. All right. Well, folks, again, thanks. Stay tuned for we do not have our January webinar announced yet, but you can certainly, you'll get an email if you're on our email list about our next, our January webinar. But stay in touch. And again, Mary, thank you. And we just wish you guys a happy holiday season as you end up your year. So thanks, and wish you all well. Bye.
Bye.